And I try to hear it, I try to feel it, I try to almost like hypnotize myself into the mood. I'm trying to capture Wyoming.
Goodman thought of horses, cowboys, and a rousing campaign song.
Here comes the Wallop Senate Drive, the Wallop Senate Drive. It's alert and it's alive, and it's Wyoming to the spur, the Wallop Senate Drive. Now, I had a lot of trouble selling the line spur, but I finally prevailed on it. I said, now listen, I do the music, let me alone. But that's the only time I really put my foot down. But I had a tough time selling the line. Wyoming to the spur. I thought that said it all, to me.
Come join the Wallop Senate Drive, the Wallop Senate Drive. It's alert and it's alive and it's Wyoming to the spur, the Wallop Senate Drive.
Go forth for Wyoming, Malcolm Wallop. Tell them in the United States Senate that the people of Wyoming are proud of their land and life, and that a Wyoming senator will fight every intrusion upon it. That you, Malcolm Wallop, will serve the nation best by serving Wyoming first, the very special needs of this great state, and by so doing, share its blessing with America.
Come join the Wallop Senate Drive, the Wallop Senate Drive.
Malcolm Wallop for United States Senate. Ride with us, Wyoming.
The image projected by that ad was essentially a deception. It was inaccurate because Malcolm Wallop is not what he appeared to be in that ad, or at least he's other things besides what he appeared to be there.
Malcolm Wallop wasn't really a cowboy, though, was he? Well,
He was a rancher. There was a little stretch there. He raised polo ponies. He was Yale educated.
Malcolm Wallop, who was elected by Goodman's ads, is an unlikely cowboy. He's a millionaire businessman, was born in New York, and is descended from the Earl of Portsmouth. But to Goodman, such details are scarcely relevant.
That's what a political campaign is, an entertainment to a large degree. And I thought of political campaigns as dramas. And I saw that they were no different from a play, except that these were real actors and actresses on the stage.
The presidential election campaign of Ronald Reagan in 1980 was the next logical step in TV entertainment propaganda, since the candidate was an actor. And just as in a Hollywood film the audience is often unaware of the influence of the producer, so in this election campaign, the voters were unaware of the influence of Ronald Reagan's own political producer, his communications advisor, Michael Deaver.
I understood that the American public was getting all of its information about its candidates from television. So I really dedicated all of my time to being sure that all that space around the head was filled with something that was going to be pleasant and entertaining.
The 1980 Reagan campaign resembled a TV entertainment, and it worked. Once in the White House, Deaver carried on producing Reagan for TV. And it didn't take him long to work out the best way to deal with the White House correspondents.
These people, you see, actually have talked themselves into believing that they're in the news business. But they aren't in the news business, they're in the entertainment business.
The boring setting of the White House briefing room was hardly suitable for presidential entertainment spectaculars.
So Deaver would always find a place. He'd go out and he'd say here, and he'd check such mundane details as where is the sun, what is the backdrop, where will the cameras be placed. But Deaver had more skill than that. Like any good producer, he not only brought Ronald Reagan to a stage, but he had props on the stage. For instance, at Normandy, at the point where the Rangers scaled the cliff on D-Day, Pont de Hoc, Deaver found a place where Ronald Reagan could stand with the dagger symbol behind, that is the monument there. And the cameras were there. And I was covering it. Tears came to my eyes, and that doesn't happen very easily. Deaver had it planned perfectly.
Intent. Every move had been carefully choreographed.
Stand over there, Mr. President.
White House advance men rushed in children to wave goodbye to the Reagans.
This particular event took months of time, picking all these spots. We walked the beaches to be sure that we had the exact visual that we wanted. We knew exactly what was going to appear on camera at each time. Those producers from NBC, CBS, and ABC had been working with us from the very beginning. They would have worked with us as we choreographed, if you will, that entire 2-hour ceremony.
At a cemetery where 9,000 American...
The President of the United States, of course, will always be a major story every day in this country. Remembering that he will always be a major story, it was my job to be sure that that was a story that we created.
Diva prided himself that no matter what the story, he could always devise a visual.
In the beginning of the Reagan administration, Diva was a genius at being able to manipulate and work with television news before television news really understood that they were being used in this way. For a while, I think a lot of people were manipulated very willingly by Michael Diva and the Reagan administration because they knew television wanted pictures.
Diva could control the TV pictures of Reagan, but he couldn't control Reagan's words, so he simply cut journalists' access to question the president.
And we would shout at him in the Rose Garden, or we would shout at him as he went to the helicopter. This, of course, was no substitute for the kind of questioning that should have gone on a daily basis.
Donaldson became famous for shouting out questions during photo opportunities. Some TV viewers thought he was being rude. What they didn't know was that Donaldson was forced into these impromptu interviews because Diva wouldn't let him properly question the president.
Sam, I'm not going to answer any questions here.
It was very frustrating for those fellows whose contracts depend upon how many times they get on television every night. And yes, the president was not available every night for them, but they could get their questions answered by me or Jim Baker or the press office or anybody else.
Reagan's 1984 re-election campaign was a triumph for Diva's approach to propaganda.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
When we ran the re-election of Ronald Reagan, the Democrats never got their act together, so we had springtime in America all the way from May to November.
But the dark side of the Diva style also flourished in 1984. For this was an election in which Ronald Reagan held a grand total of 1 press conference. No American president in the TV age has answered fewer questions from journalists.
But what you were seeing, because we are television, was this smiling, genial grandfather figure, this John Wayne character, and you were not hearing a thing I said, because when the eye and the ear conflict, the eye always wins.
Wasn't that part of the agreement, sir? Mr. President,
I think it's a photo opportunity. I don't think we better take it.
But if a diva gives you only pictures that show morning in America, your complaint that beneath the morning there's an open sewer is going to be lost. No one pays attention to the words, just the music.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes, more than at any time in the past 4 years. This afternoon, 6,500 young men and women will be married. And with inflation at less than half of what it was just 4 years ago, they can look forward with confidence to the future.
What is it that the Republicans are doing? They're connecting to the very basic values, the food values, the job, income, marketplace values, the prime value, the sex, family, stability values, and making sure that those values are covered in their communications and in the symbolic content of what they do.
It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan, our country is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we ever want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
Hello, this is Buddy Roman.
One consequence of the Reagan era is that today's consultants like Jim Duffy and Dane Strother pay fanatical attention to how the candidate presents himself on TV.
Single board for higher education. Things that
So what we have to do is go through this film, pick out the best snippets. And,
Here they view rushes of an ad they're making featuring Buddy Romer, who's standing for re-election as governor of Louisiana. And they've hit a problem with their candidate's TV style.
When I leave office, I'll be an enthusiastic 22.
American politicians have tried to sell the American voter for so long and looking in the camera and making promises, and they're not believable anymore. They just are not believed at all. The focus groups are showing us that. The voters don't want to hear a politician. So you've got to find another way to sell their message.
Fundamental changes. I think we'll have more candidates for office this next year than ever before.
So wait a minute. So now we got the best guy that we've ever had. This guy can just deliver the camera better than anybody else, and now we can't use him. Is that basically where we are?
This guy could sell a man with no teeth 2 steaks, and we know that. There's no doubt about that at all. But we can't use him in that facet, and that's a shame. But that's the way it is, and that's the grounds we're playing on now. If we try to force it, we have a credibility problem.
Ooh, I asked myself that.
That's all we got is him going to camera, though.
That's all we have here, but we got other stuff. We got him with the National Guard, we got him with children, we got him reading books. We shot a lot of film for this stuff. This isn't the only film we have.
The only man in the state's history who got younger while in office.
Well, we got to humanize this guy. I mean, we got to humanize.
He's an android to a degree. I mean, he's so bright that he's head and shoulders above everybody.
The only guy who served as governor.
We're not selling him, we're selling our message. We lose.
All right.
We lose. We're selling insurance.
But it's not just the way the candidate talks to camera that presents problems for the TV propagandist.
This is about third time.
Experienced consultants like Raymond Strother believe that the influence of television is such that what a candidate looks like can be the deciding factor in an election.
I try to be discreet and I try to be kind, but there are people who are not electable. And I try to help them through it. I actually had a candidate one time who came to me and said, I want to run for office, but we'll talk later, and spent about 6 months in plastic surgery. And had his face changed and had suction done on the fat of his body and major operations, this gentleman. And when it was all over, we filmed him, and he looked like a nightmare. He didn't film well. He looked terrible, and he didn't run.
If a candidate's physical appearance is so important, how successful would Abraham Lincoln, the greatest president in American history, have been today?
There were comments in the press that he was rather ugly, and I wonder if a new Lincoln came now, if it were possible to do anything to get him elected, because what was inside his head wouldn't matter as much as what is outside.
Oh, I think Lincoln could never have been elected in today's politics, no. But then William Faulkner couldn't be published in today's publishing either. Things change. Television's changed everything. If you had a yearbook of the U.S. Senate and the House from 30 or 40 years ago, you'd find a lot of unappealing, unattractive people. If you had a yearbook of people elected in the last 10 years, you'd find a whole group of very attractive people. I mean, image is very important.
We're in the open.
WCHS, TV8, Charleston,
2 on 1, Tom on 2.
This is News 8 at 6.
A local TV news program provides a clue as to the attractiveness standard required of today's American political candidates.
Cerebral palsy victim.
20-year-old Francis Blankenship pleaded guilty to first-degree sexual abuse. if you can associate yourself with the media and you can get some of that credibility rubbed off on you by appearing as if you're a Walter Cronkite or appearing as if you're one of our anchors on Channel 8, then I think you have an automatic advantage.
It's theirs. It's guaranteed.
Most political ads are shown in the commercial breaks during the nightly TV news programs. And today's candidates try and look like the crusading journalist.
Tell them Clint Watkins is on the phone. Look, this is one program we've got to have. Just try to see this thing our way.
Or the secure and unflappable newsreader.
And I think we're ready to say it, and I think we're ready to do it in November.
Or the investigative consumer reporter.
Worth and his staff spent an enormous amount of time on this matter. They did their own testing of these beds in department stores.
Very well.
What's the length of this? And reviewed the official testing by the Consumer Product Safety Commission.
We think that's exactly what happened.
We tend to pre-select candidates based on their appearance on television. In other words, we pre-select them for exactly the wrong reason. We ought to be selecting them for what they can do in public office.
It is the demands of television propaganda that have evolved the look of the modern political candidate and the look of his campaign adverts. And the look is still evolving.
Thank you and welcome back to Jabberwocky, the game show all America loves to watch. Bill, Allen, and Debbie, are you ready?
Ready.
Debbie, you first.
Good buddies for 300.
He hired ex-Nazis to work on his political campaigns. Bill.
Who is David Duke?
Yes.
A recent trend is for political adverts to mimic game shows rather than the TV news.
1987. Alan.
Who is David Duke?
Yes. And that's the end of round 2. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.
We've had a convergence among 3 types of people. Anchor persons on television, politicians, and television game show hosts all look very much alike today. And again, that's the effect of television.
West Virginia, a rural and poverty-stricken state, offers an insight into the consequences of today's TV propaganda. Whitewater rafting with some friends on West Virginia's New River is W. Gaston Caperton III, a wealthy insurance executive who woke up one morning and decided on a change of career.
Well, West Virginia had had real poor leadership for 4 years. I'd lived here all my life. I really loved this state. I loved its people. I'd had a successful business, and I thought, you know, there's more to life to this, and I really feel I can make a contribution and change things. And so I decided to run for governor.
Caperton knew that his lack of political experience meant that without the help of a top consultant, he didn't stand a chance. So he turned to Washington-based Frank Greer, one of the slickest in the business.
Gaston Caperton called me, and I didn't even know who he was, as a matter of fact. I had been recommended by friends of his whose campaigns I had worked on before, business associates and others, and asked me to come to West Virginia and said, I'd like to run for governor. And I've got the resources. I can write a check for this campaign.
Greer traveled to West Virginia to decide Caperton's election strategy.
The thing you try to do with research is to focus in on the things that are really important to the voters. In this case, it was a state that needed to improve its self-image, and more than anything else, we wanted to give a sense of what why he was running, and who he was. Because remember, he started at 3% in the polls, and the first biographical material is simply to say, in the context of his values, where he came from, who he is, etc.
Born and raised in West Virginia, it was here he learned about hard work and concern for others. He built a local family insurance agency into one of the largest in America, providing more than 500 jobs. He dedicated himself to helping people and improving education. Honest, capable, a progressive new leader for West Virginia. And now he's running for governor, Gaston Caperton.
I believe that we can get West Virginia moving again. We're blessed with natural resources and great beauty. And we're blessed with hardworking people who want a better life for their kids, better schools, and more good jobs. That's why I'm running for governor. I want to bring us together as a team to build for the future.
West Virginia, yes we can. We will build.
Fact of the matter was that he spent several $1 million on the air, and we outspent our opponents.
Gaston Caperton, progressive leadership for West Virginia.
I think he spent probably $2.5 million in the primary, and probably spent another $1.5 million, $2 million in the general.
Well, I think if I hadn't been able to buy television advertising, I don't believe I could have won that election, particularly with nobody knowing who I was. But I don't think I could have won it if I hadn't had a good story to tell. I don't think I could have won it if I hadn't campaigned night and day for a year and a half.
None of Caperton's opponents had access to millions of dollars to buy television advertising time. Candidates like Charlotte Pritt, who stood against Caperton for the Democratic nomination for governor, believed the secret of his success was simple: money.
Oh, he would never have been elected had he not been rich. He didn't have any experience, political experience. People didn't know who he was. I've been in the legislature for 8 years, 2 terms in the House, and then finishing a term in the Senate. The first woman to ever run and to win in my district, the Capital District, of 250,000 people. But Gaston could never have done it without money. He was packaged and marketed, and that's basically what's happened. It's the bastardization of democracy in America.
Hi, good to see you.
And I'm sure that politicians and journalists and thinkers throughout the world wonder what in the world's going on in the United States, that these little packaged miniature robots are going around. It's an insult. It's an insult to the process, it's an insult to intelligent Americans. Unfortunately, because the democracy is set up here and based on capitalism, how much time you can buy here and there and everywhere, you find this thing going on. And that's why I say it's a bastardization of the democratic process.
I think people get really mistaken about what people in Frank's business do. I don't think that they create a candidate. I think basically if they're effective, they can honestly show the public what a candidate's really about.
Not a politician, Caperton offers a new approach that will bring business and labor, education and government together. He'll put an end to politics as usual and give West Virginia a fresh start. Gaston Caperton, new leadership for a change.
Caperton was the most politically inexperienced governor in the state's history, and a combination of television, Frank Greer, and money got him elected to office in 1988. Greer's ads concentrated on Caperton's fresh, clean-cut image. One of the few campaign promises he made in his adverts was about taxation.
The Logan banner said it best. On taxes, Moore says yes. Caperton says no.
No governor welcomes the necessity of raising taxes. It is neither an easy nor a politically popular action. This is not the time, however, to be concerned with our political futures.
First off, he campaigned that he wouldn't raise any taxes, but he got in and instead he raised taxes about $400 million. It's a record high in the state, and everybody was very angry. I would have said that he probably would have been defeated soundly in those first 2 years because everybody felt they were betrayed.
And I think suffered a lot the first 2 years I was in office because I knew what to do, I had the guts to do it, I got it done, but people really didn't understand why I was doing it, and I didn't feel a part of what I was doing, and it made them angry. And so I've had to learn a lot about that. It hasn't been easy. I've made mistakes, but I've always tried to do what's best for the people of West Virginia.
Television propaganda has made it possible for inexperienced but rich and good-looking candidates like Caperton to come from nowhere and get elected to power.
I've lived in Kanawha County all my life.
But even his own consultant believes that this free market politics has its faults.
Fundamentally, I think what's wrong with American politics is it's gotten too expensive, we spend too much money, we are dependent on special interest groups to raise that money. No public financing of campaigns. And then we use all of that money, millions of dollars in each race, to run negative advertising that trivializes the political process, doesn't talk about real issues that impact people's real lives.
I hate to say it, but poor people can't be elected now. How does someone without money get elected in America if television is the single most important thing and you must purchase it? Well, if you're really poor, you can go out and raise money, but if you're really poor, you probably don't have friends who are really rich, because rich people have rich friends. So what you find in the Senate, particularly here, is a group of very rich men.
A recent American survey revealed that more than 1 in 4 U.S. senators is a millionaire. TV politics is an expensive and an exclusive profession.
Oh, I think some of our brightest and best now aren't being elected to office. I think it's a great danger to us all, that there are people out there, business people, academics, people who would serve well, who know they don't have a chance in hell of being elected, so they don't run. Or they come to somebody like me and they say, what do I need to do to run? I say, bring $1 million or $2 million, and then you can run. But if you can't get that, don't run. And that's a grave danger to the whole system.
But there is no sign of change. New York City is home to one of the most talented of the new generation of emerging political consultants, Joe Slade White.
Mayor Helmke decided he needed to have the world's most luxurious lab, and pretty soon the bill to...
I have a feeling we're going to go to a dissolve.
An expert in expensive TV editing techniques, Slade White is a devoted student of the work of Tony Schwartz and his theory that the best propaganda simply reinforces an emotion the voter already holds.
And a mayor who's taking us to the cleaners.
It's critical to touch an emotional chord.
And pretty soon the bill to the taxpayers had soared.
People say, well, how can you do an issue in 30 seconds? And I said, an issue essentially is simple. And my process is to boil everything down into its essence. And if I can find that essence, present it, and touch people with that, then I don't need 5 minutes. I don't need a half hour. I don't need 60 seconds even. I can do it in 30 seconds.
Slade White was responsible for one of the most devastating ads in recent years. He was called in to make TV spots for Don Bain, a Denver businessman who was given no chance against the incumbent mayor, Mayor Pena.
Just imagine what it's going to be like when we win this election June 16th.
Following classic Schwartz techniques, Slade White first polled the Denver voters and discovered that they thought Mayor Pena was out of touch. So then Slade White piled through press cuttings and found an issue that illustrated the mayor's weakness. After receiving death threats, Pena had employed 6 bodyguards to protect himself.
So I said, what would happen? I tried to imagine. I said, wouldn't it be a humorous situation if you tried to imagine going through your daily life being surrounded by 6 bodyguards? What effect would it have on you if you had to go through life with 6 bodyguards around you? I've showed it to, in presentations over and over and over again over the last years. And what happens is almost always the same. People read the material as it's going across the screen. Then they see the first shot and you start hearing a little bit of laughter. They get the joke immediately. But the laughter peaks on the softball one. If I had led with the softball one, it would have given it away. I wanted to first show some of the humor of this situation and then set up the real killer line was the softball, and then keeping them laughing a little bit throughout, easing them down. So it's almost like a curve in terms of the laughter, of the effect of it.
You got to decide if you're going to go free, paid, or both. If you're going to use TV, radio, newspapers, let's go over, because these are the choices.
The question of how Mayor Pena, who only narrowly held on to his job after a recount, should have responded to Slade White's ad, is the subject of academic study at a politics seminar at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. These postgraduate students are studying the techniques of TV propaganda. It is from them that the next generation of TV consultants will come.
How are you going to respond to that ad if I'm a member of the press? I'm going to ask you that first as a candidate, and then I'm going to ask you that as a media consultant. So watch the ad very carefully. Okay. You're the candidate. You are the mayor. That commercial's just been run against you. I'm a member of the press. What are you going to say?
What I think I'd do is two things. You run the paid part where you bring out the wife or the kids, maybe he's got grandkids or something like that, and she talks about how she's making a sacrifice by allowing her husband to serve the city, the needs of the city. You stress that there have been threats against his life, and maybe if she can get teary-eyed or crack her voice or something like that, something to...
Are you going to encourage her? Honey, please cry on cry on cue?
I suspect that wouldn't be a problem because she's probably committed to helping you win. And I'd take advantage of the free media by marching out the chief of police or somebody like that and have them very soberly at a press conference detail, point for point, every single threat on your life, maybe those which weren't especially legitimate, but just march out. You name the date, you say this is when, this is the threat, and this was our concern.
I mean, this is so manipulative. We're now thinking of ways to gather sympathy from the public. Is that what this has all become? And if the wife has a broken leg, you know, you're gonna like highlight the cast. You're gonna make sure like the dog is sitting in the commercial and then have like the husband pet the dog or something.
But if you bring the wife on and you say, this is a member of my family, the audience will relate to her, and then she'll make the link for the audience that this is a member of her family, he's making a sacrifice, I'm making a sacrifice because I'm gonna stick with him, why don't you? Because he's putting his life on the line.
Now, if that's the new conception of politics, and these people are in on the ground floor and they're exploiting it, I don't know how much we want to yell at them about that. They're making a living. What I would object to is they're trying to claim that this new kind of politics is good for us. It isn't. It degrades us. It keeps people cynical about and indifferent to the political process.
So in the end, what you do is you increase cynicism. And this electorate is already the most cynical in American history. The post-Watergate period has seen a deepening of the cynicism. It's gone well beyond skepticism. It's well into corrosive cynicism.
In a final irony, consultants now make expensive ads blaming each other for promoting cynicism.
We'll say Dashiell's done nothing for farmers. That's not the truth.
But who cares? People will believe anything if you say it enough.
When we're finished, Dashiell's mother won't vote for him.
Don't let them have the last laugh. Vote Dashiell for a change.
Let's go tell Jim.
Run for your lives. It's the brain polluters. First they invade your home, then they pollute your brain with political promises and expensive propaganda. Is there no real candidate who can stop them?
Yes, there is. Me, Ed Garvey. I'm not going to try to pollute your brain or insult your intelligence, but I will fight for the people of Wisconsin in the tradition of Bill Proxmire.
Ed Garvey, a good solution for brain pollution.
How far has British TV propaganda gone along the American route? Jim Duffy and Dane Struther watched a variety of British party political films. It was John Major's Journey, a film shown by the Conservatives during the 1992 general election, that excited greatest interest.
It has a tremendous vibrancy that very few parts of the country would understand. And yet
so he's going home.
He's going home. But you know what he ought to be doing? He ought to be driving home. He shouldn't be being driven home. Yeah, I mean, I recognize he's
Well, I mean, it might be unnatural for him to drive.
Right,
so, I mean,
that may be true, too. But get him with the people. Make him, if you're going to make him of the people, make him of the people. Put him in that market.
Let's see if they don't do this.
I'm sure they do. They've got to put him in the market with the people. There he is with the people. That's good.
Entitled to their own views, to their own instincts.
With blacks, look at the people of color all over there.
Let the shop record it. The record shop used to come to. Yes. And that's the house we lived in for many years.
This has one message.
I'm one of you.
That's all it
I haven't
says.
forgotten where I came from. But that may be the most important message of an incumbent, is that I haven't forgotten where I came from.
That because of my background and where I came from, that I should be a socialist. Why should I be a socialist? It is
now this is taking the issue head up. I like this.
It's a fine idea.
We've had a society in which the free enterprise.
I'm from the people who would be socialists, but I'm smart enough not to be. But we're all together on this deal.
Conservative governments to socialist governments. Is it still there?
Hell, I'm living, breathing proof the system works.
Yeah, you can come up. Here I stand. I'm in this automobile, and I used to be here. And here is good, by the way. Yeah. You know, it's real. He's real.
This is far more of an American piece.
There was an area below ground
But this is traditional American television. Think of all the wealthy candidates who run that we've had who basically say, look, yeah, I made it, the system's great, but I wasn't always like this. And if the system allowed me to prosper, the system allowed me, that's all he's doing.
There is only one cure for unemployment. There's only one way to put people back in permanent, secure, sustainable.
And you know what else they did there? Talked about jobs. Jobs. That's the first, second, third most important issue in any campaign are jobs. Healthcare, yes, that's right there.
Growth in the
but
economy.
if you don't have a job, you are what you do.
The first ingredient has to be a competitive tax structure. Low taxes give people the opportunity
Here's the taxes.
to provide for their own family.
We've hit where I've come from.
A cycle of growth.
Jobs, taxes.
You cannot lift yourself out of recession.
Healthcare has got to be next.
I think every family has their own experiences of the NHS and will draw upon it. That's certainly true in my case.
They had a poll. The poll spelled out the top 5 issues, and they strung them all together. Did a fine job with it.
Used him, which was their strongest asset. The poll also showed that people liked this guy. Not the ending.
I think my background is an asset, not a disadvantage. That's how I've always...
He just wrapped it up. My background's an asset, not a disadvantage. That's the message of this piece.
Well, it's one of us shaking hands with great men.
Yeah, it's also a leader, though. Right. We come in with the horns, you know, a la fanfare for the common man, and
if you've done something,
here we go.
Or seen it, or been
so what this is trust. You know I won't get us in a lot of trouble.
And you can
I'm not going to lie to you.
Here's the other guy.
In their own individual lives.
It's all a comfort issue. Comfortable. 10, gentlemen. Nice. And there it is at the end. Boom. He never said it. This was an American piece.
I mean, American ads tend to be candidate-dominated. The party falls in the background, and usually issues fall. And issues are only props for candidates to talk about who they are, what they believe. And in this spot, that, in a sense, is the whole spot. This is a spot about him. It's not about the conservatives. It's not really even about the election, in the sense that he's not screaming, vote for me. He's just saying, this is who I am, and you know me, you can trust me. And he never makes an overt appeal for a vote at all.
Come join the Wallace Senate Drive, the Wallace Senate Drive.
Robert Goodman, a man who specializes in emotion generation, also watched Major's journey. He was less impressed.
You ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, if this is considered emotional from their perspective and considered very withheld and private from our perspective, even dull, what would happen if a candidate actually used the word love and showed some feeling about something? You know, I don't think that at all. I think it was very restrained, to the point of, if they were trying to be emotional, they failed. You know.
Can I have a pound of those tomatoes?
First, I would have interviewed him and found out what his early life was all about. I would maybe found an example or two. You know? And maybe he would have, even in the film, come upon one of his old friends. And maybe his old friend would have said something about John. He says, John doesn't like to talk about it, but I remember that day he dived into the lake to save the little girl and her puppy, see? I mean, things could have been said about him even in the film that told us something about him. This film told us absolutely nothing at all. You know what I mean? Huh? The way the door shuts on 10 Downing Street, like, stay out. You know what I mean? After all this time, 8 minutes of trying to warm him up, they end not him being embraced or with his people again or whatever. The door slams. He says, I'm the Prime Minister, and I'm damn glad this film's over. Didn't you get that feeling? I thought the end shot was the most abominable thing I'd ever seen. Slam! Like, that's it, guys. I'm not doing it again.
Come join the Wallace Senate Drive, the Wallace Senate Drive. It's alert and it's alive and it's Wyoming to the spur. The Wallace Senate Drive. Come join the Wallace Senate Drive, the Wallace Senate Drive.
Malcolm Wallace for United States Senate. Ride with us, Wyoming.